Steve, I wanted to ask, when you're putting this together, one of the things I love about it, and one of the reasons it took me so far down memory lane, is the little stories that go with each concert. So tell me about your thinking when you're putting the book together. Was there any debate as to, should this just be photos? Should I include the story? Am I a writer? Am I capable of retelling the story? Tell us about that.
Well, okay, that's where Scott come in, because again, Scott, obviously knew about my photos and everything. And when we would be collaborating, he knew I had my ticket stubs. I kept all my ticket stubs, and he said, "Oh, that'd be great. We'll put the ticket stub under the band, and then it'd be cool if we put." Again, that's the beauty of this book. There's very little reading. Okay, there's just a little on the front page, and some shows I had some great stories, and I, up until this point in my life, fortunately, I've had a pretty good memory. Because I never partied at shows. That wasn't my thing. I never partied. And I can remember, that's why I can remember a lot of this stuff. So we'd work on the stories, and there's some pretty good ones that I just wanted to share. I don't know if you guys have any particular favorites or not, but everyone has one or two,
I love the fact that not only were you, tenacious about sneaking in your camera and trying to get great photos, there was many a night where you would find the hotel that the bands were staying in and go meet them and introduce yourself and get things signed and all that. I mean, how did you manage to do that? Because I was a fan too, and I don't think I ever was able to find somebody's hotel room.
Well, sometimes what would happen is, if we didn't know where they were staying, because, I had a couple friends a little older than me that kind of did this a little bit. And if you look on the album cover, usually the band staying under the tour manager's name. So you would just call these different hotels in San Francisco and say, it's so-and-so staying there, right?
I love
Now,
it.
if that didn't work, what we would do then is, after the show, we'd wait outside and follow the limousine back to the hotel.
Stalker 101, kid.
Yeah.
And, one of the famous stories we have in the book, the Judas Priest, 1982, the Screaming for Vengeance tour at the Cow Palace. We waited outside the Cow Palace, and here comes a limousine. And I had a painting I did in my art class in school, just a little cheesy watercolor Glenn Tipton. I held it up. The limousine stopped, and we ran up there. Me and my friends ran up there, and we're the only ones there. It's 2 hours after the concert. And in that limousine was Glenn Tipton and a girl sitting on either side of him. And sitting across was Rob Halford with a girl on either side of him. And he had his hands on either knee, right? I mean, they're really playing it up, And he signed my thing. He signed my painting. They take off. Well, here comes the next limousine. Well, that's got to be KK Downing. So we get in my buddy's truck. We're following him all through San Francisco. This guy was trying to lose us. I felt like we were in a movie scene, like a chase scene, right?
It's awesome.
This went on for like a half an hour. This went on for half an hour. It's probably 1 o'clock in the morning now, and we're still in high school. Well, finally, this guy, I don't know what he was thinking. He goes into a residential area. He goes into a dead end, like a court. Okay. Now we're blocking his way. He can't get out. But he backed up in my buddy's truck. Bam. He backed into the truck. So now everything stops. Everything just stops. We get out. There's 3 or 4 of us. We get out, and we just want an autograph. I think I had some photos from the concert before. And the window rolls down, and this is classic. The window rolls down, and in this, again, classic British voice, you hear this, "Did we do any damage to your vehicle?" It was KK Downing. It was great. I said, "No, we just wanted, my buddy had this big old metal Chevy truck that had big old bumpers that didn't do any damage, and they were nice. And again, a couple of women in there, him and Ian Hill, and they signed what we wanted. They couldn't be nicer. I don't know why they made a chase scene, but that's in the book. That story is in there. So
that's great. Yeah. I loved that story. There were so many stories in there where I thought, man, I thought I was a fan, but you really go the extra mile with some of the following them back to the hotel and that sort of thing. Was there any band on your bucket list that you never got to shoot during that time, or a tour that you never got to photograph?
You know what? Honestly, not really. And I only did my favorites. I didn't do every, whatever concert I went to, I would try to take photos. And the reason why,
you got a lot of favorites, man.
I do. But I got to a point where I was getting 2 and 3 of different tours. And I go, you know what? I think I got enough AC/DC. I think I got enough Van Halen. I think I got enough of Dio, right? And in '86, I kind of stopped. But who I didn't have was the original Kiss members. Okay, so that's where there's a 10-year gap. It ends on '86, on David Lee Roth's Eat 'Em and Smile tour. And in 96, when Kiss reformed to do their reunion thing, I go, I got to get pictures of this, right? And I did. And then I got some more of the farewell in 2000, and that's when it stopped. So that kind of answers your question. I finally got the original Kiss. Yeah. And it was great. That's how it ends. That's how it ends.
Speaking of Kiss, you make an interesting point in the book where, you photographed them with makeup and without makeup. And without makeup, I think in your words, they were kind of just another band.
Another band, yeah.
Yeah. So is there something about the time period, the 80s? Because obviously the 80s is very image heavy. The production is over the top. Was there something magical also about that time period that you're shooting where the bands are really visual? Even a band like Queensryche, looks more visual then than they do now.
Well, yes, that's a good point. You're right. That time period from 80 to 80 mid 80s, that was right. Big production, love big production. Judas Priest, Dio, Maiden. These guys always had these big productions, Right. And the good thing was they generally had good lighting. I always counted on good lighting. That's why some of those earlier shows, they're not, there's not much bright lighting. So I mean, again, I was really just shooting my favorite bands, didn't matter what period it was. And with Kiss, I was still trying to buy into when they took the makeup off and they're doing, but I even say in there, they looked like every other band. It was like they took the makeup off and Motley Crue was putting it back on. 84, 85, right? Yeah. And that's why I stopped taking pictures of Kiss after 85. I said I got enough Kiss, and they just look very ordinary. That's why I stopped.
But you know what?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting is that, if you read some of the chat room talk and Kiss FAQ and stuff like this, you start to realize there's a lot of people that are Kiss fans that grew up with Crazy Nights. That was like their first show or something like that. So for me, I think it was kind of convincing Steve, hey, dude, you've got some pretty good photos from the non-makeup years. Let's not just kind of cast them aside. Let's use what we can use. And, Steve's point, some of them didn't come out that great, but in fact, we had a really good shot of Gene, Paul, and Bruce coming up or up on the front of the stage, kind of like during Strutter of sorts, that we didn't even use in the book. That I wish we had. But, there are some really good makeup shots. And for a lot of fans, that is their Kiss because they weren't old enough to see them, 83 or prior. So, it has its place. I'm not knocking it. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. I know a lot of people that will hold up Asylum and Lick It Up and say those are my favorite Kiss records. But yeah, I get it. And I remember when they were touring without the makeup, and I was kind of thinking similar to Steve. It's like, it would be just like seeing Rat, for example, or somebody, any other band of that era that was wearing the flashy, bright clothes and everything. You're going to get the Kiss music, but you're not going to get the magical Kiss experience that we all had plastered on our walls when we were growing up.
Yeah,
that's true. You know what I mean? Exactly true. But
I love the shots you have of Motley Crue on the Shout at the Devil stuff, because that was a very visual period for that band, and they were new and they were hot, and as you say, they were kind of the new Kiss. And you've got some great stuff in there from the Shout tour. Tell us about that show.
Well, I almost didn't go to that show. I only went to that show because my buddy Dom had an extra ticket, and I was just starting to get into him at that point. And we saw him open for Kiss the year before on the Creatures of the Night tour. Mm-hmm. I really didn't know anything about him then. So then a year later, they're making some noise with the Shout at the Devil album. He was a fan. I said, okay, let's go. I brought my camera. And they played, they were starting their first headlining tour, but it was a small arenas, but still they sold it out. And they were just so raw and on fire. It was great. I'm really happy I got photos of that show because, they changed their image drastically the next year and so on. So that was really good. That was a good time period for them, I thought, That's when I really started to like them a lot.